Yeah, to briefly sum that up again, this talks about React, React Native, and JavaScript, and how you can learn it once and write it everywhere. So basically, I will be telling you about how you can use JavaScript everywhere on all platforms without having to rewrite the logic several times. So a little bit about myself. So now my name is Roy. You can find me on Twitter with the handle GetHackTeam. And currently, I work for Van der Bron, which is a Dutch company that focuses on renewable energy and also supplying renewable energy to people. Previously, I worked for the city of Amsterdam, where I did a lot of open source projects, mainly revolving around JavaScript, TypeScript, React. Not really React Native, but it's something I've been teaching at the React GraphQL Academy, where we teach people or more advanced developers how they can use React, GraphQL, React Native, and those kinds of technologies. And previously, I've been involved with some other companies as well, and also founded several startups. Um, so besides my work as a developer or founder or CTO, um, I've also written several books, mainly about React, but also React Native. So if you're still learning React Native, make sure to find those online or find me on YouTube, where you can find all the previous talks that I did. A lot about React, but also React Native, GraphQL. So that's also a bridge to my latest book about the full stack GraphQL. I think especially if you're learning new technologies, then GraphQL is something you should focus on. So in this book, you will learn to master GraphQL with React, Node.js, and also TypeScript. So it's very hands-on. So if you need to find code examples, it could be a good solution for you. So about today, so what is React Native? So we're all in the junior track right here. So you've probably learned a bit about React Native online or found the website. Maybe you fiddled around with it a bit, um, but probably you're not really used to the core principles of React Native yet. So I can't really see hands as this is a remote conference, but some people might think React Native is a hybrid solution. Or maybe some other people think it's a transpiled language that runs on the mobile phone or on other devices. Or maybe some people think React Native is native because that's what the native is in the word for, right? So maybe you can use the chat to answer this question for yourself. But actually, React Native is none of those. So it isn't a hybrid framework or whatsoever. It's not transpiled. It's also not completely native. So what it actually is it's a bundled language. So actually, you bundle React Native, so you can run it on native devices, and it interacts with native APIs. So something that's if you might be switching to the senior track later on, React Native use bridges to connect with the native APIs from um, operating system that's running on the device. So if you're running iPhone, it's connecting with iOS. For Android, it's connecting with the version of Android you're running, and it basically interacts with these native APIs, and therefore make it possible to use things like the camera or your Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi or any other things of APIs that are present on your mobile phone. And it looks a bit like this. So before recently, actually, you create React, you write React, and then it's get bundled by React Native, and then it will run on devices for iOS and Android. But since recently, it's also possible to run it directly on the web. This was possible long before ago, but it's now becoming more present. So with React Native Web and Expo, which we'll see later, you actually be able to also run applications that you create directly in the browser. So you can actually create one application that you use on a mobile phone in the browser that you can use on a mobile phone directly, and also which you can actually use in your desktop with Windows. But today I'll be focusing mostly on the iOS, Android, and web part because the Windows part is something that takes some extra work and is introduced quite recently. So it's also a bit more beta. So what does React do? React creates declarative views that react to changes in data. And this data can be mostly props and states. And these props and states, they will be derived from probably API calls or maybe local files of databases database are added. And these props and states, you can watch for changes using life cycles. And then changes will be seen in the UI components for your React or React Native application. So if you're already familiar with React, this probably isn't that new for you. If you're new to React or React Native, then it's always good to catch up on this knowledge and really see how it works. So for React and React Native, it's mostly UI components, prop states, and changes are seen by life cycles. And it looks a bit like this. So you would have a component that maybe consists of multiple components and data. There's always a one-way data flow in React. So for React Native, it's exactly the same. There's a one-way data flow. So state gets created in top components and then is passed down to child components. And these are all in the same view. And then in your data or your props, you also pass down functions or events to update the state. So if you have state in component at the top and the child components want to change something, you would just use a function that you pass down, and then state will update and everything will re-render. So this is a bit how React worked and its structures under the hood. And this example, so we have React running with React Native, and you can use it on iOS, Windows, Android, but also the web. So this is truly learn once, write anywhere. And before, actually, they've been claiming this as well, but it wasn't really anywhere. It was learn once, write on a lot of specific locations, but not basically everywhere. So now with the addition of web and Windows, it's becoming more and more anywhere. And still, new platforms are being added to the application. So it's still something that should be evolving over time. But I'm pretty confident that that's what will happen. But how can you actually run React Native? So React Native is using bundlers, the same as you use on the web. So probably with React on the web application, you're using Webpack maybe to run your application. For React Native, there are multiple options. So by default, React Native will use Metro. But something that's really popular right now is Expo, which adds another layer of confidence. And they can also bundle your code. And then quite recently, actually, there's something new in React Native, or it's not really new. You have a bundler called Hermes that you can already use on Android, and it's way faster and way more low key. And recently, there was a pull request opened by one of the core contributors to also make Hermes possible to be used on iOS. So this actually will make your bundle on iOS way smaller, because that's one of the concerns people usually have, so that React Native bundles get quite big because of all the bridges and the bundled codes. But with Hermes, it's getting way smaller. So it's a good thing to see that they actually been building upon Hermes to make it also work on iOS instead of just Android. So how to run React Native? For this, my go-to tool, and especially if you're in a junior track and you don't probably build like entire production-grade APIs, then Expo is the go-to tool, and basically it helps you build a project and run it natively on all your users' devices. So those devices can be mobile devices, either iOS or Android. They can be mobile devices that use a web browser, so you can use it directly from the web browser. It can also be desktops, of course. So with Expo, you have one bundler that helps you build one project and run it on every device. So Expo can be seen as a toolkit that enables you to use a lot of different things. And how you can actually use Expo. So if you use the React Native app library, or more like the CLI, to create a new application, you automatically get Expo in there. And to actually be able to see what an Expo app looks like, you can download Expo Client for iOS and Android, or just use a tool that I will show you later. And by using this one, I think it's important if you download it now, you can actually watch along when I show you some code examples. So let's give you some time to do that. But with Expo Client, you can run any Expo application directly on your phone without having to install any application. So it's a huge advantage. And then throughout this presentation, I will have some QR codes for you to scan. You can scan them with your iPhone, or if you have Android, you need to open the Expo Client app, and you can just scan the Expo Client. You can just scan the QR code using the Expo Client app, and then the application will open on your device, which is also quite cool. And then finally, you can just open the application on any platform. So let's leave Windows out of scope for now, but a browser will also work. And of course, iOS and Android through the usage of the Expo Client that you by now may have installed on your mobile phone. And so this is what an example of an application in React Native looks like. So we're importing. Let me show it just right here. So this is the example we have. So and here we have Geekle example 1. You can see we have a web application running, and it's just displaying this code, right? So hey there, this is Roy Dirks on Geekle. So this is how it looks like on a web. But then we can also run it on Android, of course. Then tap to play. So this is an Android opening with the Expo client. You can see it's loading, and there you can see the same text, right? So this is the same text. Hi there, this is Roy on Geekle. You can see the same for here, and we could do the same for iOS, and also run it on your own device. So if you have the Expo client app, you can download it, and you scan the QR code, and you can actually directly watch this application on your own device. So we can change this, of course. So maybe, hi, this is Roy on Geekle Cross-Platform Summit. Just like this, and maybe we can change the background color, blue. Make a color here, white. Oh, I need to put some. See, it's cool, right? And then, so this is my web view. I can go to Android. I can tap to play. Might needs to reload a bit here. Let me go to iOS then. Again, and we see here the change, right? So now we have iOS, Android. We already saw Android. There's a bit of a queue here because the thing is thus you have to wait sometimes because other people are also using Expo Snack. So the thing we're seeing here, we're just using React, right? Using React Native components. So you're just using React, but then you need to import components from React Native. For example, the view. So this can be so this is basically on a web browser, you wouldn't have a view, but you would have a div. Text could be like a span. And then the style sheet gets created something like this. You can also use inline styling. But this is to give you an idea, like the difference between React and React Native. But most of all, it's just the same. You're importing React. So you can use state from React in here as well. So maybe we can have something like this. So const state set state is React dot use state, and this would be blah 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 something. So this is just React. You can just use React in here, React, use state hook, and then of course you can do all sorts of things that you want to do. And then the biggest changes are having the exact like components, like the view, the text, and then the component to create the style. And in here you can just put your styling. This is all camel case, and then put things in here. A padding top. This is like a constant. So Expo also gives you a set of constants that you can use to do cool things within your application. So this is like the minor default application we can create with Expo React Native, and then of course have it run on all devices. So that's cool, right? Because now we have created one application, it's used on several devices, and to your users, they can either go to the web browser or they can just install it on Android or iOS. So let's have a look at some more examples. So HTML element, right? We just saw we have view and text elements, but they aren't HTML elements. So I can imagine if you're working mostly for a web and then you also want some application to be there on the native phone, you will also need HTML elements. And HTML elements look differently on the web than they do on a native application, right? So at the top, we can see our text component has an on-press thing, which is basically like an on-click, but then for a mobile phone. And then we're using some sort of linking method to open a certain URL. So this looks like a lot, because if we look at the web, it's just an H element with href, and then a link, and then yeah, it looks way simpler, right? But for the this wouldn't run on your mobile phone, because there you need to import the React Native component. So this requires you to write a lot of imperative code. So if you're in a junior track, it might be interesting to also discuss the difference between imperative and declarative code. So usually what we see here, this is React and React Native or HTML. This is all declarative code. So under the hood, a lot of things happen, but you don't see it, right? You just see a text component with onPress, and you see an H element with an href. So under the hood, a lot of things is going on, but for you as a developer, you just see text and H. So this is what we call declarative code. But if you want to make this example work on both web browsers and on native devices, it will require you to write imperative code, which actually is a step-by-step or definitions. There will be more things in there. It's really imperative. So it isn't declarative by default. So you need to do something like this, right? So again, this looks a bit more advanced. So we have a text component again, because React Native will also run on web applications with Expo. So we can just use the text and it will be converted to a span or to a H element by Expo. When you run it on the several devices, you can see there's styling link to it. There's a link, href, geekle.us. It's the link for the conference. You can see a target and you can see the onPress. And in the onPress, you can see something happening, because in here, we're actually using an Expo constant called platform to decide whether or not we're running it on web. And if we're running it on web, we will link something to the onPress event. So this is imperative code because it isn't that declarative anymore. We're making exceptions. So this is important to understand how this works. But this is also something that makes it harder for you to write applications for both the web and native at once, because you need to make sure that all these exceptions are there in your code. And if they aren't, things will break, so it will get messy. So there's a solution to this. But first, have a look at the example. You can just scan it again and then see what's going on. Just give you some time to scan this thing and load it in the browser, and then we will have this example, but we actually can see how it comes to life. And then for this, I could just easily do it like this because I'm in the browser either way. So we have the same sort of application, right? Hi there, this is Roy. See again how it works on the several devices. We're launching Android. And then we can see we have the same thing, right? Hi there. Let's maybe change the color again. Let's make it green. Oh, like this. And then maybe have the color here set to white, just to make it a bit more readable for us. And then the link, maybe we also want the link to have a separate color. Maybe we can make the color red. So it's already getting quite Christmassy. So we have some green, we have some red. And you can see the changes are done on both sides. So in here, we've created this link that we saw before, right? So hi, this is Roy, and on Geekle, and this is a link. So let's see if it's really a link. It is. There it goes. So it's the Summit website. So this links work, right? It works on web, but does it also work on your device? So that's something we should check. Let's have it load. So this is Roy, and now to check. Bam! It's going to open the web browser over a mobile phone. This is quite cool, right? Because now we are using this onPress function and this text component from React Native to create a link that works on both devices. So for iOS, it will do the same. We have a very long queue there, so let's not do it. But then again, if you've downloaded the Expo client, you can just scan this QR code and then you should be able to play around with this. So maybe you can change the URL to something else. You can fiddle around with the styling, maybe add more components here, which you can quite easily do. So this is not that complicated, right? It looks pretty straightforward. And this just works on all devices. Or you can use a separate library for this, because of course, there are libraries to help you solve certain problems, like having to write this imperative code, because maybe you just don't want to write imperative code because it takes more time to test it, to prevent there aren't any bugs. So there's a library actually called Expo HTML elements that will help you create elements that you can run on both devices automatically based on HTML. So this is something you can find on NPM. And as you can see, it supports iOS, Android, and the web. And so let's see what it looks like. So this is the NPM thing, and then yeah, then basically how it works is, let me see if I don't have the link in it here. So let's just go to NPM Expo HTML elements and show it to you. So basically what you could do, you can import like a H1 or an A from Expo HTML elements, and then you can use it just like you would do on the web. So this will makes it easier for you to recreate the same sort of logic on both your mobile device and also in the web browser. So they have support for a lot of different things, as you can see. They even have support for external things. So that's a cool way for you to get started with this. But now I think we should look at some more advanced features, right? Because of course you're here to learn, and these things are all still quite basic. So let's find a more advanced feature like the camera. I think most applications that are built for the phone, at some point you want to use the camera, right? Because that's actually the main advantage of having a phone, that there's cameras or multiple cameras in there. So cameras always require you to do several things. You need to request permission to use the camera, and you actually need to enable the camera and use it on the device. So requesting permission is something that works differently on every device. So iOS has a different way to request permission, Android has one, and in the web, for example, Chrome or Firefox, they also have methods to have you request permission to use the camera, for example. And this is a recording I made this morning, I think, to actually test it out. So this is the third example I'll be showing you. And in this code, you can see you need to request permission, and then you can use the camera on all devices instantly. So I'll give you some time again to scan this example to see what it looks like. And in here, you can see several steps. So at first, of course, requesting permission to use the camera, and then secondly, enable the actual camera. So if we go here, we can find example number 3. Again, make sure to scan it with your Expo client so you can use it on your own device. And in here, we can see again, we're using several things. We're using state from React. On the web, you can see it here. Actually, I already enabled the camera, so you can actually see me right here waving at you to see it works. So let me see how it goes. So we're going to start by importing permissions from Expo, because we need to request those permissions to actually use the camera. And then we're going to importing the camera from a package called Expo Camera. And then in here we're having state. So we're using state to see whether or not we have the camera permission. So we have a use effect call right here. Clean it up a bit because otherwise it will get messy. It still works, right? So whatever happens, so whenever my application loads, the use effect hook will be called, and it will start asking for permission. And it asks for permission using the permissions API from Expo, which you can find right here. So we're asking permission to use the camera, which is quite important because you need to ask permission to use the camera on all devices. And whenever someone said it's granted, status will be returned, or you know if you can actually use the camera or not. So let's try this for Android maybe. Tap to play, only a small queue of 1, so it will resolve quite fast, I think. Already see something is launching. So there we go. So now we're opening the Android device, and we're running this code that does several things. It first starts by requesting our permission to use the camera, and then it will open the actual camera. So here you can see, right? So Expo wants to take pictures and record videos. So let's say we want to do that. If we press deny, actually, nothing will happen. We can see here, if you don't have camera permission, it will just return an empty view without nothing, without no camera. Or if we say it's false, it's going to say we can't access the camera. So for sake, actually, let's try deny. You can't access camera. Okay, let's try another device. Let's try iOS. The queue is a bit long. Maybe go back to Android. It already has a long queue. Which one is faster? This is going well. So let's open up an iOS, see what it looks like over there. So we're already there. We have just a queue position of 1. It started to load. So again, we're opening the same code on another device. Expo would like to use camera. Yes, we let you use the camera. And then actually we get a blank screen because, well, we can't use the camera from the emulator, of course, because the emulator doesn't have a camera. That's why I always advise you to take your Expo client on your mobile phone, either iOS or Android, scan the QR code and actually see what it will look like. But for web, you can see it all works perfectly fine, as you can see me waving here. And this is all being done by this camera component. So it's not that much code. I can see it's only like 46 lines. And with this code, we've created a camera that we can use on web, Android, and iOS. That's cool, right? It's not that much code, but still you get a lot of functionality. And who would know that writing the use of the camera would be that easy? So maybe you can already start creating your own TikTok or Snapchat competitor using this small library and this small code example. So again, here's still the URL if you want to scan this and use it on your own device. And there's way more to explore because we've only seen some basics, right? So we saw how you can create a link that works on all devices, how you can create a basic application that runs on all devices. And something else we saw is how to use the camera on all 3 separate devices. So we've seen some features, some more complex, some more easy, but still there's always more to explore, right? And something that's a vital part of every application that you want to run in there, I think, is using React navigation. So how you can use navigation that works on all devices. So this is something that's interesting, right? Because navigation on a mobile application is different than navigation in a web browser. So React navigation on the web, so React navigation is by far the most popular library to use navigation for React Native. It also has a way to run on the web. And as you can see, Node support for the web is experimental, work in progress. It has bugs, missing features, blah, blah, blah. But still, if you want to create a basic application that works everywhere, it still is functioning correctly. If you want to go for more advanced things, also want to make sure that your SEO is on track, so Google will still like you, then it will take more time to have this work. But for basic applications, it already works. So this is something that's good to know. If you create a simple application that does several things like making pictures, having a profile, having a detail page, you should be fine with React navigation on the web. If you're building an e-commerce or a social medium, you maybe need more advanced features. And something else that's cool is progressive web apps, or PWAs in short. So this is a website that you can install as an app on your phone. So with Expo and React Native Web, you can do this again. So you can create a PWA, a mobile website, and an iOS and an Android application all at once. And for usage, you can just go to the Expo documentation and see how this works, because a PWA will also work if you don't have an internet connection. So this is another feature that's more advanced, but you can already use it. And then there's something really cool. You can use React Native with Expo with Next.js. So if you're familiar with React, Next.js is a framework for React that makes it super easy and super simple to create applications. And Next.js also has navigation built in. So that navigation, you can also use it with Expo and React Native. So this post on the Practical Dev was posted by Evan Bacon, and he is one of the people that works for Expo. So if you would follow him on Twitter or on the Practical Dev, you can find he has many more tutorials and explanations about how to use Expo with React Native and React Native on the web to create applications for all platforms. So we definitely check this out, because the more you read about it, the more interesting it gets. But still, like I told you, React Native Web, you can already do a lot of things with it, but it's still coming there. It's still things to improve. And of course, it isn't perfect yet, but still things are being added to it. So that's good to know and good to understand. So thank you again for listening to me. If you want to learn more about the things I've mentioned and showed, make sure to find my Twitter page online, where I've been tweeting a lot about GraphQL, React, React Native, TypeScript things. Or if you still have time during the breaks to watch some more talks, make sure to find me on YouTube. And then if you're interested in GraphQL, make sure to get my latest book about building full stack GraphQL applications, all with TypeScript, React, not React Native, but it's something you can probably, as you saw today, it's easy, you can do it, so you should be fine with that. So yeah, thanks for listening, and make sure to find me online. If you already have some questions, I think you can just post them in the chat, and then we can make sure that we can have them answered for you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Roy, for your talk. It was, I think, amazing. So I captured a couple of questions. I think we have time to answer them. So you can see one on the...
So you cannot do a phone emulator with an AMD chipset. I wouldn't know actually. I use the emulator with Xcode on my MacBook, and that works. But I'm not sure if you're mentioning the Expo Snack. Maybe it doesn't work there like that. But what I usually do, I just use the Expo client on my phone, because it will gives you the best idea about how to interact with it.
Okay, thank you. And one more, I think more global and philosophical.
So are there any chances this framework won't be used anymore in a couple of years, or is it the opposite? I think it's always a gamble if you try something to see if it's being used in a couple of years. But it's already adopted by a lot of big companies. So Wix, which lets you build your own website, they use React Native for all their apps, and they heavily invested in it. And also React Native is being used by Facebook, also in the Instagram application, in their own Facebook application. So there's always a chance, but there's a lot of big companies that heavily invested in it. So yeah, I think it will be safe bet to say that you can use React Native for at least the next 5 years on production environments.
Okay, Roy, thank you for your answers. I think your talk was really enjoyable. Sorry, yeah?
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. So we're like saying thank you for you for now, and we'll be looking to hear you more on the Q&A session. So guys, I hope you like really enjoyed Roy's talk. So Roy, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.